Hello everyone, welcome to History Forge. My name is Taylor Hamblin. I'm going to be talking a little bit about a Lewis and Clark primary source, actually primary sources, and specifically how we would analyze these sources for trustworthiness. It's one of our 7 skills under sourcing and summarizing, so I'll go ahead and show you that. And if you're my students using this video, what this is kind of just a recap, because I've already talked to my students about this idea of trustworthiness, and we've already gone through a video. It was actually the last video we did. Can't remember what I was over. Oh yeah, it was about Louisiana Purchase. We talked about the trustworthiness of Alexander Hamilton writing an editorial to Thomas Jefferson, or about Thomas Jefferson. So we talked about, the primary source being a primary source. Then we talked about like how much we can trust it, even though it is from that time period. The idea of a primary source is always trustworthy is really dangerous. And a lot of history teachers and just other teachers will say primary sources can always be trusted, or they're just better. But remember, people can lie. Like, people can lie anytime. Like, you can go into a diary, write a bunch of, lies about your day, and then 100 years later, people can find it and be like, look at this truth. That's not the way it is, though. And as a historian, as people, we need to kind of look at that and be like, all right, what's really happening here? What's the bias? What's the perspective? Why would this person possibly lie? Why would they tell the truth? All those things. So we need to be thinking about that specifically. So looking at our primary sources, looking at describe the trustworthiness of the source, we need to see if it's a first-hand account, first of all, and what you can trust. Those are the 2 main things. So for my students, I want you to look at the Lewis and Clark source. They're here on CK12. If I scroll down, you'll see this section right here. I'll go ahead and read it for people who don't know. It says, after the purchase of the Louisiana from the French, President Thomas Jefferson dispatched a team of explorers led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore the newly acquired territory. Lewis, Clark, and the rest of their team left in 1803 and returned in 1805 and kept extensive records of their journey. Read the documents below to determine how the party interacted with the Native Americans they met. So these are going to be 3 primary sources. One is right here. It says letter to Meriwether Lewis, Thomas Jefferson. That's the first source. And then, can I even highlight it? Can I? I don't think I can. All right. And then the next source, we scroll down, will be diary entries of William Clark. That's the second source. And then the third source is diary entries on Sacagawea William Clark. So those are the 3 primary sources, okay? You need to, as my students, read all 3 primary sources, and for each one, tell me how trustworthy the source is. So remember, you have to use these 2 things. First of all, you need to tell me if it's primary. Now, I'll give you a tip. All 3 are primary. I'll tell you that right now. How do we know that, though? What can you prove to me, or what could you use as evidence to prove to me that these are primary sources? Next thing, what can you trust about these sources? You have a source right here that says letter to Meriwether Lewis from Thomas Jefferson. So this, little source is about 2 paragraphs long. What can we trust from this source? What do we know about it? What information could we definitely, without a doubt, trust? So in order to do that, we need to think of a few things. Is there any bias? And I'll write this under the bullet points. What is the bias of the source? Perspectives. What are the desires of Thomas Jefferson? Thomas Jefferson and Lewis and Clark. And the list probably could go on, but really be thinking about think deeper. Think about why these people are doing what they're doing. You have to tell me what you can trust about these sources. So basically, if you were writing a research project or doing a research project about the Louisiana Purchase or about Lewis and Clark, you would want to tell me what these primary sources actually tell you. Do they tell you what Thomas Jefferson was hoping for out of the Lewis and Clark expedition? Does it tell you what Lewis and Clark felt? Does it tell you if anybody had any racial bias? Does it tell you what people felt like? Does it tell you about the relationship between Native Americans and Americans? What does it tell you? And then you have to explain why it tells you that. What evidence do you have? How can you base that off on what evidence can you use to base this in some kind of good historical research? That's what we want always, okay? So I'll be thinking about these things. This is going to be a really short video. It's kind of just telling you what to do. But again, use all of these sources. Try to check back with me if you're one of my students. And that's pretty much it, okay? So if you're my students, go ahead and start. Now, everybody else, welcome to History Forge. This, a lot of these primary sources that we use are a lot of times, doctored a little bit. So that's one thing I want to talk about today. If you look at these sources, you'll notice that these paragraphs are rewritten. So technically these are secondary sources because they are rewritten, but I think for students it's good for them to see sources that they can understand. So if you are a teacher who uses these, I highly recommend them. CK12 is a great website to use, and I've really had some benefit of students really going through these sources and pulling some really original information out of them in order to increase their knowledge of certain topics. In this case, Lewis and Clark expedition. So if you're more interested in these kind of primary sources, I make a few videos every week. We post on social media. I got a website too, and all that stuff in the video description. Also, the links to this actual website, CK12, is also in the video description. So if you are interested in it, please check it out. Otherwise, it's it for me. Have a great day. Thanks for stopping by, and take care. Bye.